Graco Spray Tips, a comprehensive guide. If you're like me, you've searched high and low looking for what the best tip is for your application. It can be pretty difficult. There's a lot of information out there. Graco have some great information, but not all of it's in one spot. And it can be pretty difficult to decipher what the information means and how it impacts you. So I've got basically the full range of Graco spray tips, OneSeals, and also tip guards here. And we're going to cover off when to use them, what they do. So let's kick it off. At the very beginning, you've got a OneSeal. Your Graco OneSeal sits behind your tip guard. We've got a great video all about OneSeals, so if you want to check that out, we'll link it below, but I'll cover off the key things here. The OneSeals change depending on a few different tip types, and they also change depending on whether or not you're using water-based or solvent paints. You'll always need a OneSeal in the tip guard, and some key signs that they need to be cleaned or replaced is if you're getting leaking of paint around this area here, or if you're getting spitting from around the tip here. It's an indicator that maybe this isn't installed properly, or maybe you've got some debris on there as well. Because it's a soft rubber gasket, this can be screwed hand tight onto your gun. To remove them, you simply use the arrow side of your tip, and you can press that in the top there, and they come out like this. It's made up of two components, the concave metal section and also the black or yellow rubber seal. And they just sit on each other just like that. And if I want to install it into my tip guard, I can use the bottom section of my tip, and this is true for all tips, like that. I simply want to line it up with the edge and press it through the back. Then I can install my tip, just like that. So that's how to install your OneSeal. It's how to clean your OneSeal. And here's some of the different options in the range. So you've got your standard RAC X OneSeals. Your standard RAC X OneSeals are for your blue RAC X tip guard. And these ones have a larger orifice. You can see that larger orifice there. They're used for the blue LTX tips. And I'll get into sort of the different tip options and what they mean. So standard RAC X OneSeals for your LTX tips, but you've also got another one with a much smaller orifice, and that's for your FFLP or your LP tips. So I don't know if you can see the difference in sizes on those two orifices there. Whenever you purchase a spray tip, you always get a fresh OneSeal in the packaging. My recommendation is if you're purchasing fine finish low pressure tips or your low pressure tips, just install the OneSeal that comes with that into your tip guard. It's also always a really good idea if you're switching between different tip types, just to have a backup guard with the correct OneSeal in it. So that way, if you're using blue tips, you can have one guard set aside for that. If you're using green tips, you can have one guard, and you don't have to worry about changing those OneSeals across. It does make a difference, and it will impact the way the paint's atomized, and it'll essentially lead to a poorer finish if you don't swap them out properly. So RAC X, they come in the standard for the LTX tips, and they also come in the smaller ones for your FFLP or your LP tips. You then have yellow. Now, in your tips for your fine finish low pressure, you'll see that it comes with a black and a yellow. The yellow ones are specifically for solvent-based paints. That's where they shine. And these ones here are for your RAC X, so your blue tip guard, and they're for your standard LTX tips. In your fine finish low pressure tip, you do also get the smaller orifice OneSeal with the yellow plastic cover for solvent based as well. So if you're spraying any solvents, it's a good idea to use these, because if you use your standard soft rubber, these will perish and you will get leaking. Gray. These are your XHD tips. So XHD is extreme heavy duty, and it's made for your protective coatings. They aren't overly common in the world of contractor spraying or Linemarking, so you might not have seen these before. You may be curious. It's all about protective coatings. So think marine application or any of those heavier metal-based coatings if they're spraying any sort of protective coating on metal framing. And then finally in this range, we've got RAC 5 solvent-based OneSeals. RAC 5 is your red tip guard, and these are the solvent OneSeals for that tip guard. So if you're line marking and you're spraying solvent-based paint, you want to use these ones here. That's pretty much all there is in the range of OneSeals, how they work, the differences there. If you're using normal water-based paints, you'll typically have a black rubber. If you're using solvent-based paints, you'll have a yellow cover. If you're using protective coating paints, then you'll have the gray ones to match the extreme heavy duty. So that's what sits in the back end of the tip guard. Moving on to the tip guard itself, we've got a few options there. We've got the RAC X tip guard, which is your blue tip guard. This is the most common tip guard when it comes to commercial painters, so contractors doing house painting, interior and exterior. This is what you'll mostly see. It's pretty much just the standard application for that. In terms of threads on these three here as well across the range, they've all got the same thread type, so they're pretty well compatible across all Graco guns and almost compatible with pretty much most competitor guns as well. So you'll just want to check the thread size. It does say it sort of on the packaging, but yeah, in my experience, you know, if you've got a Wagner gun, you can use a Graco tip guard, vice versa. You've then got your RAC 5 tip guard. Now the RAC 5 comes standard in a couple of areas. You may see it with your DIY equipment. Homeowner Magnum equipment will come standard with the RAC 5. Now, when it comes to Go Industrial, what we do typically is we actually include a essentials kit, or we recommend an essentials kit with our Magnum units. That includes some of the fine finish low pressure tips. And to use those tips, you do need the RAC X tip guard. So when you're switching to your fine finish low pressure tips, you'll need to use a blue tip guard for that. The other area you'll see the red tip guard most commonly is in line marking applications. This is compatible with your yellow and your black tips and is a perfect option for line marking customers. The other option in the range is a XHD, which again, extreme heavy duty. It's the same thread size, but it's rated to a much higher pressure, up to 7,250 PSI. Typically with protective coatings, you'll see that they have to be applied at a much higher pressure, or that the viscosity of the materials are so thick that they need to be a higher pressure to actually pump through the line. Hence why these are rated much higher. They're also quite resistant to chemical breakdown. We've got one special mention when it comes to tip guards, and that's this guy here. So it looks like a RAC X tip guard. However, there is a key difference. And you can see that if I take a standard RAC X tip guard, it has a metal thread, whereas this one here has a plastic thread. Now, this one here is specifically for the Graco Ultramax handheld spray gun. It's the 17N225 in Australia is the model number of that unit. But yeah, just the Graco Ultramax handheld unit. It's the solvent-based unit. The reason that they've gone ahead and used a larger thread type on this one is just so people don't get confused and that they understand that they've got the solvent-based model of the unit. It does create a little bit of confusion and can be a little bit annoying, I guess, if you're going to grab a tip guard to replace and you just pick up that one because it's the most common. Just keep that in mind if you're looking for that. We'll include all the part numbers to everything that we mentioned down below as well, so that way you can check them out on our website and get a bit more information there. Moving on to tips. There's quite a lot of tips in the range. I've included most of them here. However, there are some that we've excluded from this list, and it's mainly around the very, very entry-level DIY units. We've got the TrueAirless tip. It's a replacement for typically included, which was the RAC 5 tip. It's no longer included now. It's the TrueAirless tip. It's a good tip. It works similar to a fine finish low pressure. However, it's in a DIY range. It's not really rated for as much usage, so you won't probably get as much life out of it as a contractor rated tip. In the DIY range as well, there's a couple of other very basic stock standard tips as well, which I haven't included those in this breakdown. Your TrueAirless DIY tips are compatible with the RAC 5 orange tip guard. So That's compatible with that. It's not compatible with the RAC X or the other tip guards. We've got the brown RAC X tip. This is for plaster coatings or very low fluid coatings where there's very high volume solids in them. It'll help basically atomize and move those coatings with this tip. It is compatible with your RAC X tip guard. In terms of tip sizes for the TrueAirless tips, these come in quite a range of tip sizes. There's a fair bit of variety. We'll link the products down below so that way you can check out on our website the range, the variants in different sizes. The cool thing about this one is it actually does have on the front of the tip a recommendation or a guide for where to use the tip. It's a pretty cool little sort of addition. Generally speaking though, your first number doubled in inches is your fan width, and then the last 2 digits there represent the orifice size, so basically the output of paint. Keeping it really simple, 3 is a 6-inch fan or a 15 centimeter, 150 mil. 13 or 13 thousandths of an inch is probably a low medium output. This would be great for spraying something like doors, window frames, trim, those sorts of things. In the brown range, you've typically got quite higher variants of tip sizes because they are a lot heavier coatings. So you'll see that the first numbers, the fan widths vary, they're usually quite high. And then also the last 2 digits, they usually sit quite high just to move those high viscous, low fluid materials. Again, we'll link this down below so you can check out the different options that are available. Moving on. XHD. Extreme heavy duty, again, we've covered it off. Protective coatings, think marine, think steel coatings. This is where these live. High pressure, high wear. That's the only tip I'd recommend if you're doing protective coatings, unless you're using flat tips, which we'll talk about. Don't have any here, but we'll talk about them. Yeah, this is the tip to use. They, again, come in quite a range of different sizes, both fan widths and orifice sizes, and we'll link that below so you can check that out. Something that's a little bit finicky, I guess would be a good word for it, is the coloring. So you'll notice that some of the colors are basically the same, or, you know, you've got sort of these ones and these ones here. So you have to pay quite a bit of attention to what's actually on the labels of the tips to get a good understanding of what you're actually spraying with. But this one here in particular is what's known as a WideRac spray tip. It's compatible with the RAC X tip guard, and essentially it has a much wider fan width. So in this case here, you're dealing with the 1223, which is a 12 times 2, so it's a 24-inch fan. So it's quite a massive fan width. And then you've also got 23 thou orifice size. Where you would maybe use this is if you're trying to spray out massive sections of interior walls, or if you're spraying roofing coatings and you're looking to cover quite a large amount of distance. They're amazing tip for that. They're relatively new in the range, so there isn't a hell of a lot of information about them. There's also a low pressure version. So here's a good point to maybe discuss some of the differences between what a standard tip is and what a low pressure tip is. But put simply, it's low pressure. So it takes less pressure to atomize the paint to get the same finish quality. So what that means in real terms is you operate your machine at a lower pressure. It doesn't put as much strain or as much wear on your unit. And as an output of that, you actually get a bit less overspray as well. Now, the trade-off to that, or the cost to that, is the tips are more expensive. That's basically it. And this is a WideRac low pressure tip. Again, 1225, so we're looking at a 24-inch fan width and a 25 thousandths of an inch output. That's quite a high output. I'd probably see this if I was doing interior walls, or if I was doing, again, roof coatings. It's a great option. The tip you all know, the LTX spray tip. This is the most common tip when it comes to contractors, and it's also the most cost-effective in the range. It's a great general purpose interior exterior tip. It comes in a huge range of sizes, both in fan widths from a think maybe a 2 sort of 4-inch fan all the way through to maybe an 8, which is a 16-inch fan. So you get quite a range of fan widths, and you also have quite a range of orifice sizes as well. So you could spray standard acrylic paints to some thicker roofing membranes with this tip here. It's a great general purpose tip. It's quite cost effective, and yeah, that's probably the most common tip in the range. The next step to that is the low pressure tip. These have recently been rebranded or recolored. They used to be a green color, the same as the fine finish low pressure tip. So again, you'll have to note sort of on the tip, you can see it there. It's got FFLP versus LP. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these tips. But I think most of the green ones in the low pressure range have sort of been circulated, and now most of the ones we get are these ones here. Low pressure, again, just like the WideRac option, it's a low pressure tip. So you're going to be getting less wear and strain on your machine because you're operating at a lower pressure to achieve the same atomization of paint. Great option. This is typically our go-to in terms of general application. It sprays all the same interior exterior coatings as the LTX tip. However, it's low pressure. The trade-off to that again is cost. It does cost a little bit more per tip. However, in my opinion, you're not really going through tips very often. You're purchasing them fairly infrequently. I think it's quite worth it to go a little bit more expensive in the tip to save that wear on your machine, a little bit less overspray. And if you're looking for a slightly better finish as well, then you've got the FFLP, but we'll cover that. Basically, the way it works is it atomizes the paint softer. So there's a chart, there's a diagram, which we'll put here, where you can see that on your standard tips, it's quite a harsh pattern. Whereas with these, it's kind of like a feathered edge, if you will. So these work wonders. Next on the list, fine finish low pressure. Again, just like the low pressure tip, however, there's a dual screen for double atomization is probably the simplest way to imagine it. So it atomizes the paint twice, which just means that you're getting smaller particles of paint that hit the surface you're painting. What that translates to is a smoother, finer finish. This is great for lighter coatings, but it's also really good for interior coatings and exterior coatings where you just want to get a slightly better finish. And it's also low pressure as well. So you get all the same benefits of the low pressure tip, where you're operating at a lower pressure, less wear on your machine, and you also get a better finish. Again, price-wise, I think they sit at about the same price of the low pressure tips. They are more than the LTX tips. However, these are great. In our DIY kits, we recommend what's called our Essentials kit, which comes with a 40 centimeter extension and also 2 of these tips, an FFLP 514, which is great for your walls and your larger areas, walls, ceilings, exterior walls, and then also an FFLP 312, which is great for your doors, architraves, skirtings, window frames, gutters, all those smaller areas where you don't want to be wasting paint essentially. Both these tips, the LP and the FFLP, are compatible with the RAC X tip guard, not with this one. Hence why in the Essentials kit, we include the 40 centimeter extension, which comes standard with the RAC X tip guard. That way you can use these tips fresh out the box. If you're looking for some really great recommendations on what tips to use when it comes to your interior spraying, we've got a great video that Jacob's just finished. I'll link it below. It's awesome. He covers off a really good in-depth tutorial video on how to set up the Graco XT spray gun. He also covers off what are the best tips to use for interior spraying in a 2-bedroom apartment, I believe it is. It's a great video. Highly recommend. Check it out. Moving on, line marking. One of my favorite areas because it's very simple. There's only 2 tips in the range and it makes it great. You've got your RAC 5 tips. They work with your RAC 5, your orange tip guard. And you've also got your LL5 LineLazer spray tips. Again, they work with your orange RAC 5 tip guard. What are the differences between these 2 tips? Put simply, yellow LineLazer spray tips are perfect for when you're marking lines. They have a great heavy edge, because of the natural concave pattern. So it's like this, where it's a little bit less in the center and a little bit more on the edges. It makes for a really clean, neat, even line. This is the only tip you want to use if you're marking lines, unless you're using flat tips, which is another option. We'll link them below. There's quite a bit of range when it comes to the Graco flat tip options, and typically you'll see them if you're using a paint truck or a road pack system. That's where you might see the Graco flat tips. They're a great option, but they operate a little bit differently. When you're using a push unit, or if you've got a drive unit, maybe a 3400 or a 200 HS, and you're marking lines, this is the tip. These are going to give you the best lines. I've seen people use these for stenciling as well, which is where you're going to run into problems. Because it has a concave pattern and it's got really heavy edges, when you overlap it, what you're doing is essentially pooling paint everywhere you overlap. And it'll be really light where you didn't overlap, and then really heavy where you did, and it's going to lead to pooling, it's going to lead to improper wear, and that's where you want to use your black tips. Your black tips have a convex pattern, so there's more paint in the middle and less on the edges. They've got kind of a feathered edge, if you will, and that makes it really good for when you're overlapping the fans, because when you overlap them, it fills in the center and you have a really nice even spray fan. So a few special mentions, flat tips. Now, there's quite a range of different flat tips. When we're talking about line marking, you'll typically see two different options. You've got the Graco standard TC flat tips, and then you'll also see heavy edge flat tips. Again, what the difference there is, your standard TC tips, they've got a feathered edge convex pattern, and your heavy edge tips have a concave pattern, so they're going to give you a nice heavy edge. Typically when you have a paint truck or a road pack system, that's where you'll see the Graco flat tips used a lot in line marking. They're really easy to work with, they're very durable, and they can also come in larger sizes that help accommodate a higher micron build for marking lines. You can also see other flat tips and other different types of needle systems across the range. So a couple of examples of that might be fine finish spraying, where you have flat caps and you've got different needle systems for that. You've also got systems like a Graco 200 MMA, which is for cold applied plastic, and there you'll have mixing chambers and cartridges and all sorts of different options there. So I'm not going to go into those, but just so you're aware, those are the different sort of niche options, and we'll link them below because why not? You can check them out if you've got an interest in those. That's pretty much everything when it comes to the general application of spray tips, tip guards, and OneSeals. Leave questions below if you've got any, or if you want any more information on anything that we've covered off. Again, we're going to link everything below, and we'll also include a couple of guides as well, some blog articles, so that way you can do a bit more reading. In the meantime, happy spraying. Hope you guys have a great day. Thank you for watching.